warm welcome to our viewers from the heart of Vienna. I'm about to walk down Graben, one of the oldest roads in Vienna, which goes back to Roman times. Originally, this place used to be a defensive ditch. The German word Graben actually means ditch in English, and it was filled up about 900 years ago at the end of the 12th century. Today it is one of Vienna's most famous shopping streets and a good place to ponder on the advantages of long-term stability and long-term residency in Austria. So when is long-term resident status an option for you in Austria? The first important point to understand is that you cannot apply for long-term resident status without having had a record of at least 5 years of residency in Austria in advance. And when I say residency, I'm talking about residency for private purposes, red cards plus residence in the strict sense of the word. In addition, to become an Austrian permanent resident, you'll have to show that you have a command of German at B1 level. That would be lower intermediary level within the meaning of the Common European Framework of Reference for Languages. When you have children who attend school in Austria, primary school, middle school or high school, this requirement is very often waived. Another crucial requirement for permanent resident status in Austria is a minimum presence in the country. So when you file your application, you have to make sure that in the 5 years preceding the application date, you must not have spent more than 10 months altogether out of Austria, and you should never have spent more than 6 months consecutively out of the country. In circumstances particularly deserving of consideration, for instance, you have to do military service abroad, or in case of a serious illness, you may spend up to 24 months outside Austria, but, and this is very often forgotten, you have to notify the authorities in advance. So you've obtained your permanent resident card, but what happens after 5 years, after the end of the validity period? It is important to understand that permanent residency is not just for 5 years, but the underlying right to remain and work in Austria is of unlimited duration. This is why, according to a groundbreaking judgment of the European Court of Justice in January 2022, and we were quite heavily involved in obtaining this judgment, the court ruled that when you apply for extension after 5 years, the immigration authorities are barred from requiring proof of financial status, accommodation, health insurance coverage, and many other things. Instead, they only have to focus on your presence in Austria in the last 5 years. To be more precise, in this judgment, the European Court of Justice established that to preserve permanent resident status in Austria, or elsewhere in the European Union for that matter, you only have to show a presence of a few days per 12 months period, not per calendar year, per 12 months period, anywhere in the European Economic Area. Unless there's a serious criminal conviction, you are on safe ground and your permanent resident status has to be extended. Despite its basis in EU law, it is important to understand that permanent residency is always granted by individual member states. This means that if you hold an Austrian permanent resident card, this does not entitle you to reside and work in other EU member states. You would have to apply for a separate permit there. It may be a little bit easier with Austrian permanent residency, but still a separate permit is required. We're already quite close to St. Stephen's Cathedral, so it's time to wrap this up. If you are interested in obtaining permanent resident status in Austria, reach out to us, EOS, when it really matters.